All right, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and call our work session to order. Our first item of business is a financial update from our CFO, Ms. Pickle.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
So this is an update of the finances for September of this year. So the third month of the 2025 budget. So you should have can you guys hear me better now?
Speak up. Just
I
a
can't
little
hear you.
bit
Actually, I
more,
can't hear you
please.
very well. Sorry.
Is it on?
I don't know. You should have this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. There you
Yeah.
As you can see, this is, as usual, same spreadsheet, just looks a little bit different. I truncated it and made it just 2 pages this time instead of 3 pages. So the very first, we have all the different listings of revenues. So FY24 column is September of 2023. The FY25 column is September of this year, so just last month. And then there's the comparison, and then you have the percent of the budget that it's covering. If you look all the way down at the bottom of the page, so that's the general fund revenue, and they're slightly up compared to last year. We skip to the second page, and this is going to be the expenditures. So in the top section, you have the general fund expenditures, and they're slightly up as well. And that's mostly due to, we added 2 new departments, the community development and the parks admin. So the parks department was already there, but we have the admin now, which is mostly salary there. And we did have a couple large invoices from Barge for the design, Barge design, I should say. And the other funds are operating as expected. So we're in pretty good shape. It's not much different than it was last year. And a couple of department notes. So this month, Tracy and I attended the business tax update by it was a training offered by MTAS. So it's a 2-hour training, and she and I attended that. And Ruthie Rowan, April Sledge, and Beth Powell will be attending it at the end of this month on the 30th. So that way, everybody in the admin department will have an update on the business tax changes and the license changes. So they had updated the limit from 50,000 to 100,000. Also this month, it's this month in October, I sent out my first round of monthly reports to the department heads. It did include a little bit of October, but which is not included here on this. And I received some good positive feedback, so that's off to a good start. Also, we had our first capital improvement plan meeting, so we kicked that off, and we haven't gone very far yet. We're just in the discovery and the data gathering phase, but we hope to have something in place before the retreat, the commission retreat in February, so that you guys can review that. So, any questions?
Chris, where was the place for Barge? Where did you say that was on the expenditures?
It would be under stormwater.
Okay, is that
Thank
for the
you.
mapping?
Yes.
The mapping of the stormwater, and that's ARPA.
That's grant funds,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Pickle?
Well, I did receive my love letter from the county, with my taxes and all that stuff on there just this last week. So, so could you kind of explain how our cycle works that we, because some people would look at this and say, well, we're really spending in the negative here and we're,
Right.
could you just explain for those of us who don't know?
Well, actually, we have only collected about $2,800 in current year taxes. So the 2024 taxes, like you said, were mailed out to the customers,
Mhm.
to the citizens.
And that's out of the over 5 million anticipated.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. So right now, we haven't really collected. This is the lowest time of the
Okay.
year.
This
So-
this is in the swell, I guess, or the valley, or the
The valley.
valley. Yeah.
The valley,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, for a couple months, we still won't see any type of significant.
Oh, you won't get
revenue from-
anything from me until February. Because it's late in March.
That seems to be the most significant time in February. So
right.
it seems like just historically, that is when those people pay,
Right.
is in February. So I think you're okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well,
Ms. Pickle, in your professional opinion, would it be prudent for the city to halt expenditures and withhold services until such time as those cash revenues appear in the form of our property tax payments later this year and early next year?
No, I don't think so. We have a healthy fund balance, so it is not an issue. It's totally expected, so.
Good to hear. And I see all of our expenditures are tracking right near the 25% mark, of which is the percentage of time that we are progressed into this fiscal year that's been budgeted for.
Right. We're the third
Um,
month into the.
The only thing I see that's up is animal control, which is, I think, due to an increase in our contract amount with him, with McCamey from
Yes.
over last year.
Mhm.
And everything else is, within a few percentage points or less. Okay, any other questions for Ms. Pickle? Okay, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is a presentation on the barrier concept at the Meeting House. And I'd like, okay, Mr. Tate.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioners. I'll make this short and sweet. It's just a concept that Nate Hall and myself, Nate's been doing most of the work on. I just want to share with you right quick. It doesn't involve any voting or any money or anything at this point, but the commission has asked us to take a look at Morrison Springs and Dayton Boulevard there across from the Meeting House. And Director Johnson worked with our partners at Barge and got a concept of putting in Jersey barriers. And this picture right here, some pictures, some artwork that Nate put together that shows some of the obstacles involved. You can see he's got like these storm grates highlighted, manhole, well, actually those are water meter covers for those businesses that affect, where we can place some of those. But we're coming up with an idea to set them about a foot off the curb and break them out. Go to the next slide. This is as it looks now. And this is a concept that Nate put together. And you can see off in the distance from the Food City side looking forward, those are concrete Jersey barriers as opposed to water-filled Jersey barriers, which, from the research he's done, they're not as substantial as concrete.
No, just,
I thought somebody was going to say.
thank you.
But concrete Jersey barriers, and we're looking at intermixing those with some flower pots in between places where we can't cover or we don't need to block something from the previous slide. So just some concepts and ideas of what we're looking at. Wanted to share that with the commission that, we're working on this and we hope to come back in the next couple of months with some proposals and some cost estimates on what this, and this would not be a permanent fix. It may be a long-term fix until we get our capital improvements program in place and do some larger work in this area here.
Maybe medium term.
Medium term.
I see there's also a concrete barrier on the far right of that image there. That's a kind of a planter barrier in one. Is that also something that's being considered?
Well, it's something we'll consider. The biggest concern that we have is the weight. We have some planters like the round ones in the middle that weigh over 2,300 pounds that we have in place that we own now. They used to be on boulevards, you may remember.
the dead plant holders.
The dead plant holders.
Yeah, the dead.
Well,
plant.
that was an agreement with those business owners in the church to maintain those, and after a while, they kind of quit maintaining them, and it fell on the city. So, but it would become a city function to maintain those.
They will not be dead plant holders.
Exactly.
If and when we reinstall them.
So I see that the precast concrete barriers, they say weight 2,000 to 5,500 pounds. And then the planter say also 2,000 pounds or greater. So,
Right.
the weight and the protective factor is pretty similar in both cases.
They are. And it depends, the weight on the precast concrete depends on the manufacturer for one thing, and then the dimensions. Some of them are 32, some are 42. But we'll get into that more and more before we come in, ask the commission to fund this project. We'll have those details worked out.
So, my one thing is visually it kind of obstructs these historic buildings. have we looked into sort of like a more open, like bollard kind of
Well,
alternate with, the planters, for example? Like,
if you remember here, about 3 or 4 years ago, we closed, Ashland Terrace because of, road failure. And it was closed for a long time. The failure was caused from the uphill slope back behind the wall that contains Stringer's Branch. And we're facing the same thing here. Stringer's Branch is just under the floors in those businesses there. And to put bollards of substantial size to stop cars, we would have to burrow deep down into the ground. And we don't want to disturb that and cause a failure along that wall with water running in.
that's unfortunate.
So can I speak to that a little bit too? The 32-inch Jersey barrier height is gonna be at street grade. So it'd only be about 2 feet, about 24 inches, 26 inches above the sidewalk height. So with the lower Jersey barrier, I don't think the visual perception, it won't really block the view of the businesses from the perspective of the motorist. I don't think we're concerned about that. We don't want to hide those behind these Jersey barriers. So it's unlikely we're going to do the tall Jersey barriers, and likely we're going to do the shorter ones.
The business is gonna be able to put their sandwich boards over the, over the front.
Or maybe some public art.
How far
Oh, yeah.
across the area are you talking?
We're talking about 100 feet.
Okay.
In total. We're not going to the extreme ends of the block. We're just going to, an impact area there. in front of
Restoration
businesses.
and meeting house area?
Right.
Okay.
Where any traffic coming off, it'll go this way and miss the corner, this way and miss the corner.
Okay, thank you.
Well, so this is kind of like putting the splint on the broken leg, but not finding out what's causing the broken legs, if you ask me. I mean, this seems like, yeah, I hope it is a temporary solution, because I don't see this aligning very much with our beautification of our long-term goal on that. And I don't think it gets down to the root cause of why are we having that? Are they trying to beat the light? Are they trying to beat the light and lose control? I mean, I would like to see some study on why these cars are coming through there,
Yeah.
Are they having a seizure? It's just a one of, and that's the only way we can do it. Maybe so, but it's, if they're,
And that's happened.
oh, yeah,
The seizure thing.
yeah, it's happened, but,
Well, we are at the leading edge of a study of Dayton Boulevard from Signal Mountain north to Gad. So that will inform this. This is just, I characterize it as a midterm. These are all things that will lift and set in place, not dig and pour type stuff. It isn't a long-term fix. There needs to be a better understanding of the east-west traffic and the north-south traffic, and factor in bike and ped, safe for all users. So this is a Band-Aid.
okay.
It's an affordable,
I like hearing that, is what I'm saying.
short to midterm. We can do it in the short term. My expectation is it'll be in place through the midterm. And what I mean by that is probably 5 to 10 years, because our real fix at this intersection is on TDOT timeline. It's going to require grant funding. We have to do the studies and the design and know exactly what we're asking for, enter into TDOT grant cycles, maybe several grant cycles. So we really have to be thinking about a decade before this intersection is re-envisioned for the next generation of users. And so it's a short to midterm fix. It's something we can do largely on a work order type scale. We can just go with our own staff resources, with Nate and public works resources. We can design this, if you will, and go and procure it and place it. And I think really make it safer. This isn't a fig leaf. This is substantial safety improvement to the people on the sidewalk and the businesses right there.
And it won't impede the ADA accessibility of the sidewalk either.
Right.
Yeah, there'll be no sidewalk encroachment except for the planters, and we've already measured those out, and it keeps the minimum ADA.
So really re-envisioning this intersection, you're gonna have to start talking about, possibly changing lanes of travel and number of lanes of travel, and that scope is just way beyond what we can just do on a
Well,
work order.
We just now got our sidewalk or our lighting,
Right.
done over there, and that was approved 3 commissions ago, 4 commissions ago. I mean, we just now got it installed during our commission. It was,
I'm gonna go on the record as saying by mid-December, that project will be closed.
I think we're talking about weeks and months here with our own efforts. TDOT itself has about a 15-year event horizon for most of their projects. And they're trying to cut it down to 10 years. So, they realize that it is taking too long to execute TDOT projects. But the reality is it's difficult when you have moving utilities, acquiring right-of-way and environmental considerations, and a lot of times improving the functionality when you take a historically vehicle-only right-of-way and then add in bike and ped. That is layers of complexity. So they're doing difficult things and it takes time. And all that presents on some scale here at this intersection as well.
Oh, I was just gonna say, is it true too? I mean, they have very specific, approved like vendors that we can use as well with TDOT, so that can kind of slow things down.
They have a list of certified contractors and that they use that we could probably piggyback off of a contract, statewide contract.
But sometimes they're on other, projects. And
Right.
so sometimes it takes a little bit for them to make
Yes,
their
ma'am.
way to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Especially because we're small potatoes in the scheme
One
of
mile wide,
a
6
lot of
miles
their
wide.
other contracts. I do like the language that you use, Commissioner Phillips, that this is a splint.
Yeah.
We're doing triage here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what can we do, in the, next few months, hopefully, to protect this intersection, to protect the businesses and the people using this infrastructure over the next few years until we can, while we run our x-rays, while we figure out what the, deeper causes are, and how a real long-term solution would look and how we're going to pay for it too, because it's not going to be cheap.
Mayor, you mentioned the businesses. Have these designs been run by any of the businesses for their consideration?
We have not intentionally, but while Nate and Ricky Reeves and myself were out taking some measurements, there were some folks come out. Of course, we talked to some folks at the meeting house, and they were like, "Oh, great, we love this," And then there's a salon next door, and they come out and said, "I've been trying to get something done here." "Oh, great, we love it." So, the word has spread, and everybody we talked to, I think we talked to 3 people on the street the day that we, walked most of this and took pictures. And there was at least 3 people from separate businesses come up and thanked us for doing that. So
If this is, like you said, a medium-term solution, we're potentially going to be looking at these Jersey barriers for at least 5 years, say. Would it be worth pitching it to maybe the Public Art Committee to see if they had any thoughts about beautification, or ways that it could be kind of, dressed up a little bit?
I'm going to say yes, it could be. But one thing that we talked about in the office one day was, the distraction of drivers coming down. We don't want to create something that would be blinding or distracting that would cause a wreck. So, with some consideration of that in mind, and certainly I think it could.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Tate regarding the barrier concept? Okay, thank you so much for the
I
update.
just want to say thank you to all the commissioners for all your support.
Oh.
Public Works is better now than we've been in a long time. But I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
and I finally seen that we have a report from you guys that's because you don't have to have it on the Post-it note. Well, I'm just saying, I mean, that you have a management tool now. You can see how many calls you went on. We know how many calls the police and the fire went on, and now we know how many work orders have been turned on and turned in, and how many requests for street cleaning we've had, and it explaining why that John will pass right by that bulk truck of trash because he's picking up brush today. And it's like, well, he just drove right past that. Well, he knows about that. You know, we'll get it on the next day. So,
We've executed since this time last year, we've executed somewhere in the neighborhood of 8,000 work orders.
okay.
Wow.
8,000.
And we've only been able to track that since we've got the iWorks. Is that right?
I was gonna say, you guys have always been working that hard, but now we at least can count it.
Some evidence there.
Yeah, exactly. Now we can prove it.
Guilty.
All right. Our next item of business today is public hearing and request to rezone 107 Cartwright Street, ordinance number 24-1265, and I'll turn it over to Community Development Director Johnson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The ordinance before you tonight is to rezone 107 Cartwright Street from R1A to an RTZ zone for the intended use of townhomes. The applicant, who is Mr. Gordon Holden, he is also the property owner and he's a general contractor. So this is a pretty complete package deal. He's again expressed his desire to be 3 attached townhomes on the current vacant corner lot with access off of Red Oak Drive. So this is a corner lot. So to reposition those accesses, they will be readdressed to a Red Oak address. The property is located just inside WWTA sewer moratorium. However, the applicant is fully aware of his responsibility in obtaining the necessary approvals for a sewer connection prior to a building permit being issued. Those conditions do not reside with zoning. Sometimes zoning has to happen and to figure out what requests actually need to be made to WWTA. And as recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission and by planning staff, the proposed RTZ zoning is in harmony with similar applications of the RTZ zone classification, as with similar multifamily uses that are in the neighborhood currently. The Planning Commission did, however, recommend the addition of limiting the number of units to no more than 3. However, given the size of the parcel, again, and with the adopted RTZ zoning setback requirements, that condition can appear to be a little redundant. Our adopted regulations already accomplish that intended limitation in units. So again, with that would be my recommendation, is that condition be removed. And if so be it the commission, then we would resubmit an amended ordinance to reflect that change.
At the second reading.
Correct, for
Yep.
your second reading.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
I was just going to ask, this is the same gentleman who lives here in Red Bank, right? Who just came to us for the rezoning of the other property.
Dayton Boulevard,
Where was it?
Dayton Boulevard, where the tree is.
Oh, that one.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he lives here.
Yes, he is a local developer and
Okay.
general contractor. So again, he does have a little bit more skin in the game.
Sure.
He is local. He lives in Red Bank. He builds in Red Bank.
Mm-hmm.
He
He
built.
is finding viable properties that satisfy the desires for more housing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing it in harmony, again, with our regulations, and being mindful of what those impacts are on surrounding properties.
He built 3 houses on my street.
Okay. Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item of business is budget amendment to appropriate unexpected expenditures and funding from the THSO grant in the amount of $132,226.50 for the general fund and $52,233.90 for the solid waste fund. Ordinance number 24-1266. Ms. Pickle.
Again, this is to amend the budget, like you said, the original operating budget for FY 2025. These 2 items were previously approved, I believe, in the last meeting. So this is just to amend the budget to send it to the state. So that way we can change our numbers there on the original approved budget.
Okay, so it says unexpected expenditures and funding. So
The,
When we have
The
THSO
grant funding.
Yeah, the THSO is the grant funding, and that is the first part. And then the second part is the vehicle repair on the garbage truck.
right. So the THSO grant we apply for every year, but we aren't allowed to budget for it until we receive it because it's not guaranteed.
Right, yes, and we were awarded it, so.
And then the 52,000 from the solid waste fund was for the repair to keep our garbage truck up and running,
Yes.
as
exactly.
discussed last meeting. Okay. Any
That-
question?
That is from the solid waste fund, not the general fund.
Right. Of which there's ample balance. All right, any questions for Ms. Pickle?
I had them answered earlier. No.
Okay.
This is our budgetary excellence. coming through. Right. I mean, this is just making sure we got all of our, a complete deck to play with when we go into the
Right,
audit.
to make sure that all of our expenditures and our revenues are
Previously, they've done this at the end of the year, right before the budget, but we're working to do it as it occurs.
Okay,
The THSO grant runs federal, starting in October, where ours starts in July, so it overlaps a lot of times in our 2 fiscal years here at the city, so they have to, I don't know how they do it.
Carefully.
One good answer.
okay, thank you so much, Ms. Pickle. All right, next item of business, approved drug and alcohol testing policy, resolution number 24-1743. Ms. Perry.
So this is a policy we have had in place since 2015. We're just updating it, changing around some provisions and allowing supervisors to make some decisions that they in the past hadn't been able to make, like who has to get drug tested, what reason do they have to get drug tested, and things like that. So we're just bringing it up to date, we're doing that by all our policies.
Okay. Good question.
I have some questions. Where's the testing? Where does the testing of the blood or the breath?
It depends on what time of day it is. If it's during the day when like ASC is open, we have protocols with them. I just started protocol. Park Point. I think they can do it after hours for us, so we don't have to wait till the next day.
Okay, I had, this is part of the employee handbook.
It's referenced in the handbook. Our previous handbook had all these policies mixed up in it.
Yeah.
We've pulled them out so we don't have to do an ordinance every time we need to update a policy, and this is just the second piece of it.
Okay. And random testing is, like it says, random,
Yes.
for those that drive the vehicles.
Yes, safety sensitive, we consider police, fire, and most of public works safety sensitive because of the nature of their jobs.
Okay, I think I have one more question. On page 24 or 28, the alcohol testing is performed by a qualified technician. Is that what you're talking about, the AFC, the contract? Okay. And the employee has to go through substance treatment while off work, or can the employee work some and have treatment simultaneously?
I think that's probably going to be a case-by-case basis.
Okay. I see that.
I think it's talked about using the employee assistance program
Mhm.
for potential rehab or counseling or something like that. When I worked for the state before, EAP is offered during your workday
Right,
as well.
it's
So,
very limited in
Okay.
how much treatment they can offer. So there are some other options that we have to look at.
okay, but case by case. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions regarding the drug and alcohol testing policy? Okay, thank you very much.
Just so everybody knows, this is important because of Tennessee drug-free workplace. It allows us to get certain grants, and it also gives us a discount on our insurance.
Yeah, I was wondering, do you
Good to know.
get the discount like I used to for
Our
my
liability
business? Yeah, general liability and workers' comp, or, okay. It's significant.
Oh.
Believe me.
Well, what's significant? What do you
The,
mean?
the insurance discount from your, workers' comp and your general liability, if you have a policy in place, then in other words, you get a policy, we give you a discount, so you have the policy. It's not government regulated, it's insurance regulated.
It's a carrot, not a stick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well done, HR Director Perry. All right, next item of business, formally accept the Bicycle Boulevard proposal from Barge Designs. Resolution number 24-1744. Community Development Director Johnson, I have been looking forward to hearing about this project for a very long time.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, so we'll take you down a little timeline to see how we got to where we are. So, back in mid-2021, yes, 2021, the city authorized the application for a CMAQ grant through TDOT in the context of seeking funding for the design and construction of a 2.2-mile Red Bank Bicycle Boulevard paved connector in order to provide a safe bicycle route as part of a shared roadway concept parallel to Denton Boulevard. In January of 2022, the city was formally awarded the grant from TDOT, and by resolution, the city accepted that grant award. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, the city was notified that the CMAQ grant funds were on hold due to funding availability. And we were advised that it could be as late as 2025 before funding was fully available for the project to move forward. So we were on hold. Back in June, July this year, we did receive notification by TDOT that funding had been released. And so the grant project again could move forward. And the contract with TDOT was fully executed by the city of Red Bank, I think in September of this year. It's not been that long. So our next step was to ensure compliance with the consultant selection policy requirements of TDOT and to release an RFQ soliciting statements of qualifications from professional engineering services from TDOT vetted and approved engineering and design firms. So TDOT does add that other layer. If you recall, back sometime last year, we put out an RFQ to onboard traffic engineering consulting firms. Although we solicited it here locally and satisfied our procurement, TDOT grant funding has an extra layer. So we satisfied that. We developed an RFQ. We released it. It was posted on the TDOT website. From that endeavor, we received 6 well-qualified submittals from reputable firms across the state that were interested in working with us. So we did go through a tremendous vetting process. We do develop an evaluation rubrics. It's not just me making a selection. So for this particular RFQ, we had 4 individuals review it separately and just submit the evaluations back to me, and then we calculate the scores, and whoever rises to the top, that's who we're going to go with. We know they're vetted, qualified, and capable firms. So, and after this process, it was clear Barge's submittal did rise to the top. So before you tonight, this is the next step is for, if we approve onboarding this firm, then we will seek a full formal scope of work, fee schedule, and a proposed contract from Barge, which again, we will have to submit to TDOT. For them to review and approve before it is fully executed by the city of Red Bank. Yes, it's a journey. So this is a really good example of when we articulate that TDOT projects and grants, they're tremendous in their value, but we're in it for the long haul. It is not a sprint. It is definitely probably an Ironman endeavor, but we are in it and we are moving progress. So again, I anticipate if we award this evening, we're probably still looking at another 45 to 60 days before I can get a contract back to you to engage with this firm, to start the design, the engagement, how do we start laying out a preliminary plan to see a bicycle boulevard come to life.
Well, as slow as it may be, one more step in a direction of finished is good news still.
Well, I mean, I think Martin said it one time best, that it moves with intent, right? I mean, we got to take in all the considerations that we're going to have a TDOT firm that's going to do the stuff. So everything is moving with intent, and that makes it slow.
Well, and this will continue to be the case as long as we are relying on TDOT grant funds to try to execute projects like this. Of course, it would be possible to do a project like this out of, property taxes out of the general fund, but not very many of them because our revenues are limited. And so leaning on TDOT grant fund resources lets us stretch our dollars a lot further, but it's a trade-off. for the amount of time it can take.
It is. The value that comes with the partnership is tremendous, because you are able to see more projects start turning dirt, and coming to life. But notoriously, you will hear myself as well as Director Tate, there are just some applications that we're just not poised and ready for. So we do have to go through a cycle to move through. It really just becomes a timing game. So a lot of the efforts that we're doing in some studies, data, the iWork system tremendously helps us when we start to look to put a scope of work together. So we're starting to piecemeal the effort so that when timing does open, we should have some viable projects that are ready to at least be competitive. There's never a guarantee when you submit an application to TDOT or to a local grant opportunity. So it's about how competitive and how ready you are to actually see a project get started.
So just out of curiosity, so we're going to go apply for a grant. How do we as a city go about that? I mean, do they just come over and knock on our door and say, hey, we got some money and would you all like to put in sidewalks? I mean, how does that all start?
It starts with having an understanding of what sources are out there.
Okay.
There's
And who does the work is what I'm kind of getting.
staff does.
No, really?
Yes.
Huh?
There's staff.
You mean, so people like you
Yes.
and Jeffrey
Yes.
and Michael,
Uh-huh.
so they're the ones that
And
are,
Greg.
and Greg,
Houston,
right,
depending on where those sources are coming from. And in addition to that, we build relationships with other entities and other agencies who have been successful in particular grant projects.
Right.
Probably case in point is we have built a stronger relationship with the city of Chattanooga when it comes to transportation-related projects, no longer recognizing a city limits as a wall or a barrier to travel through. We want that connection for our residents and for our tax base.
Yeah.
So to be able to work together to leverage our ability to go after joint projects makes it much more successful.
Could I add a little bit to that?
Please.
Each of the department directors move in their industry-specific ecosystems, and they all have their grant. Earlier this evening, we changed the budget to recognize a grant that comes through the law enforcement service, and that was Tennessee
Highway Safety Office.
Tennessee Highway Safety Office, which looks like a public works thing, but it's actually a law enforcement thing. So Chief Seymour and the law enforcement ecosystem are constantly pulling down grants. Tracy, in her risk management hat, is constantly pulling down grants from KEP, and those get doled out to the department that's best used. We often fair share them. Like there's a PPE grant that comes down from PEP, and so Tracy does public works time this year, and it's police department next year. And so we dole out those applications so that our city is competitive. And of course, in the public works, there's lots of grants, and there's really good partnership between public works and community development in a lot of these transportation grants. And the Bike Boulevard in particular actually began with a partnership with Southeast Tennessee Development District. So Ashley Yingling Gates' fingerprints is all over this way back in the day as well. So the Transportation Planning Organization, TPO, is a big source of federal money. So being savvy and sophisticated player in those circles, and we are well represented by Mayor Holly Berry, Community Development Director Johnson, and Director Tate. They're formally seated on those TPO committees, and so that's a gateway for a lot of federal dollars and a lot of grants as well. Just having those working partnerships with people down at the RPA that we meet through the TPO, it gets to be alphabet soup, but it speaks to the complex nature of how you get these grants. You have to move in the right circles and have staff who are dialed in.
Well, it sounds like me, kind of, we're leveraging our staff to get a lot of free dollars that are, or well, not free. We all know that they come in, but there's grant money out there that we could be leaving on the table, is what I'm kind of getting at.
Well, I think.
If we didn't have this, if we didn't have
Yes.
staff to talk to them, and we
Yes.
don't know what's going on.
You don't have the staff with the bandwidth, you can't apply. And
Somebody has to answer.
another example of something that really looks like a grant, but wasn't a grant, was last commission. Michael Pham came in and briefed how we're gonna get our first ever dedicated bike lanes by simply engaging with TDOT and Chattanooga, and instead of just restriping as is, they're gonna restripe to meet our new desires for functionality of that pavement. So it isn't a grant, but it's kind of the same thing. It's where staff are taking every advantage of every opportunity that comes along to advance our Red Bank goals as TDOT does its thing, as Chattanooga does its thing, as Southeast Tennessee Development District does its thing, that we're in the mix advancing our agenda, the commission's agenda and the community's agenda. Thank you, Commissioner. Great question.
So I do have one more question too. So with this new information and assuming this all happens tonight, do you have a sense of the ultimate timeline of the project? Is that firmed up at all? I mean, I know it's still moving at a glacial pace, but you know, it's not nebulous anymore. It's sort
Well,
of.
not only do you have timelines with TDOT, we also have timelines with our consultants, although our RFQ does, solicit that information. How poised and ready are you to turn staff loose, right? But through some of these steps, you're going to have environmental oversight. You've got to have right of way. There are a lot of things that will happen behind the scene that we won't see on the ground happen just yet. But again, you also have winter weather that comes up. We could have a design ready today, but seasonally, it may not be the best time of the year to start a project. So a lot of those factors will come into play. Once we submit the scope of work back to Barge to have them detail it out, that's when we'll start taking a little bit more of a focus on what can be a realistic schedule. So I anticipate having more of that when I come back to you with the contract to execute for the service.
Commissioner, I'll give you an answer that I know Director Johnson doesn't want to give. The Barge proposal itself envisions a 3-year event horizon from awarding the contract to them to construction completion, which would take us to the end of calendar year 27. I think that's aggressive. That's why Director Johnson really doesn't want to say that, but it does characterize that from where we sit right now to a completed project is beyond 2027 at least.
It's the nature of the game.
And I mean, I think we could have made more progress on this by now if they had had the grant funds available when we were actually awarded the grant in January of 2022. But because they didn't have the funds to distribute to all of the awardees, then it became a waiting game for that.
Sure, and I think it's just a good illustration of the cycle that TDOT goes through as well, because when they release and announce and receive applications, they're 1 or 2 year budgets behind. So they also are waiting for Federal Highway Administration to release funds to them that they can therefore allocate down to their agencies, which is tremendous help with TPO. They do a lot of heavy lift and behind the scenes to see when gateways are gonna open or if a gateway is not going to. So it really is hindering on budget cycles and then how many projects that they have. Sometimes they have overage, and from what I understand from a budget year, this is how we were able to be funded. They had an overage from other projects that didn't max out. So they take those funds and then trickle them down to, as they identify, smaller projects. So of course, I'm happy to take those crumbs.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions for Director Johnson on the Bicycle Boulevard?
Just keep plugging. I mean, that's all we do, just keep plugging.
Thank you.
Thank
right.
you.
So that is all of our discussion items, and then we have citizen comments for items on this work session agenda. Mr. Granum?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time for citizen comments. So please observe these rules. Comments are limited to 2 minutes or less, and the city recorder will operate a timer. Please respect her direction and conclude any comments if time expires. Comments should be addressed to the board as a whole, and not to a particular commissioner, the city staff, or to the audience. The commission is here to listen, not to respond or engage in back and forth, so please do not expect to reply during public comment. At this time, citizens are invited to the podium to comment. Please begin by stating your name and address.
Cliff McKay, 2618 Berkeley. Okay, I like all this talk about the bicycle lanes and sidewalks and all that. But as one who's lived here all his life, has walked literally from Red Bank Body Shop all the way through the tunnel. Now, if you've done that, I know the last few years the sidewalk conditions have helped quite a bit, but there's still gaps in that. But I'm just thinking, if I walk from my house through Cherokee, through the tunnel, there's sections there that you're taking your life in your hands doing that. Now, I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about how we want to implement or get somehow to walk. We've had bike lanes and all that, but how can I walk safely through that? Because you're taking your life in your hands to do that.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Any other comments for any items on tonight's work session agenda? Okay. Any other business from the commissioners? All right, if not, then we'll adjourn our work session and reconvene at 6 o'clock for our regular meeting.
Is that sign down or go?
Time's quick.
Yours is new.